Hello everyone, this is Jayansh, and in this video I would be taking you over the basics that you need to know before buying your first laptop before college, or maybe buying a new laptop with specific needs which you might have before joining a college. So this won't be a very professional video which I will be making, just a simple informative thing that I am going to be making so that you can all have a rough idea before upgrading or maybe purchasing your first laptop for university. So let's get right into it. So the first question which we encounter while talking about laptops is that what is the basic categorization of the laptops? So we can basically categorize them into ultrabooks and gaming laptops. What I mean by ultrabooks is the normal laptops which you see which are sleek in nature, like the Dell Inspiron, let's say. Even a MacBook is a portable device, so we can call it an ultrabook. Basically anything which is super portable, super light, gives a long enough battery life is called an ultrabook. As I've already mentioned, the advantages of an ultrabook is that it is lightweight, it has a better battery life, but it certainly lacks the performance with comparison to gaming laptops. We're going to see why that's the case. When we come to gaming laptops, these are the big bulky bad boys which you see all around the shops. Dell G15 is a good example of a gaming laptop. Asus ROG, Republic of Gamers. Asus ROG Strix is another good example. um, there are plenty of other good players, but these are the only famous ones that I know. So yeah, so the gaming laptops have specific use cases, and we are going to see further in this video why why are the gaming laptops designed in that particular way. They have better performance, but they are really heavy. For example, a Dell G15 would be around 2.8 kg, while I can safely say a Mac can be around 1 kg or even less. So that's a major drawback of the gaming laptop, and it has a minimal battery life. We are going to see why that's the case in the future as well. Now I'm going to briefly talk about the types of operating systems. Basically, every other laptop in this world than the Apple laptop, that is the Macs, they run on either the Windows operating system or the Linux operating system. Mac have their own, Macintosh has its own operating system called the Mac OS. The Windows and Linux run in all sort of other PCs like Dell, HP, Acer, Asus, or Asus, however you pronounce it, or any other brand you can name. But the Mac runs on the Mac OS, and Linux is not a very popular OS. Yeah, many people with specific use cases do go for the Linux OS as well, but the most famous one out of all these is no-brainer, the Windows OS. Now, I would come back to ultrabooks and gaming laptops for a second, and I would explain why these specific characteristics belong to both of them. So basically, the difference in battery life and the size of the laptop is created due to two major things: the processor and a dedicated GPU. What I mean by GPU is a graphics processing unit. Like CPU is there in every laptop, like both are there, but yeah, the major thing is CPU. That is the computer processing unit that is present in both, like that has an equal importance in both the gaming and the ultrabooks. But the gaming laptops have dedicated graphics card and a that is called the graphic processing unit. The ultrabooks do have a graphic processing unit, but that is an integrated one with the processor. Processor is just a chip in a laptop that perform that that performs the role of a CPU. So the processors are usually on the heavier side in the gaming laptops, which means they give better performance. And if you're using a dedicated graphics card and a heavy processor together, they need a lot of energy to run. They have a power rating of around 75 watt, 55 watt, a turbo frequency or the maximum frequency of 115 watt. It is also turbo power, I'm sorry, the turbo frequency is measured in gigahertz. So the gaming laptops have heavy GPUs and heavy CPUs running both together, which definitely alters the battery life, and the size of the laptop increases because there is a need of a dedicated thermal cooling system which keeps the laptop cool, since a heavy processor and a heavy GPU or a graphics card running together produce a lot of heat, and if the heat is not taken care of properly, the laptop might get damaged, the motherboard might get damaged. So The ultrabooks have a very light cooling system, usually thermal paste or anything. The gaming laptop or a small, they of course have small fans, but the gaming laptops are dedicated to big fans and a thermal paste cooling system as well. The ultrabooks have less powerful processors. That means they consume less energy and hence the battery life is elongated. That was the basic difference between a gaming laptop and an ultrabook. Now, what's the specific use case while you might require a gaming laptop? So the first misconception people have regarding gaming laptops is that they are useful only for gaming. Yes, gaming laptops do help a lot with gaming. They are designed for gaming primarily because gaming requires dedicated graphics and they provide a dedicated graphics card and a heavy processor and dedicated cooling for that. But heavy programming or the tasks in computer science which require a lot of GPU use, for example, machine learning models, then also I guess a gaming laptop is the way to go for you if you are ready to trade off the battery life and everything. So proceeding further, now we're talking about the basic things to look out for in a laptop. So processor, as I already mentioned, is the thing which acts as your CPU in a laptop. The RAM is the random access memory. It decides basically how fast, it partially decides how fast the things load on your screen, basically how fast the things load on your screen, how many things you can run together, and it has small contributions to all these things which you see on your screen. The storage of the SSD, it is pretty self-explanatory that it is the amount of files, data, and apps that you can store and download in your PC at one given point. I'm sorry for saying PC, but a laptop at a given point. I recommend only going for the SSDs because they are the most famous and reliable sources. HDDs are mostly outdated and no one really uses them. There is an option to upgrade your storage to an extra HDD in gaming laptops. In gaming laptops, you also get the option of expanding your RAM or SSD since some games are pretty heavy. I mean, they occupy a lot of space and hence that's necessary in them. Now, battery and screen size, as I already mentioned, battery is usually mentioned in watt hours. So basically, one of the best batteries you can get out there is a 90 watt battery, of course, in limited budget. But this is usually a very expensive range. So a common range to go for would be anywhere between 65 watt hour to 81 watt hour. Screen size for me, but bigger the screen, better the work I'm able to do on a laptop. So I recommend going for the 15.6 inches. But if you're tight on budget, a 13-inch laptop works equally well. So, in going to the types of processor, this is the most important thing in a laptop. The processor decides the power of your computing majorly. We are going to come to the GPU and other parts soon, and and battery life, SSD, etc. in detail. But the most important thing you need to consider while buying a laptop is the processor which your laptop is going to have. Now, of course, there are two types of laptops: Windows and Apple laptops. Apple laptops use the Mac operating system, as I already mentioned, and all other brands use the Windows or the Linux operating system. No one really talks about Linux these days until you go to the specific user case. So I'm going to be taking only Windows and Apple here. So basically, two famous and like the only big dons of the Windows laptop processors are the Intel and AMD Ryzen. So basically, these are two companies which produce chips or processors for the laptops, and Apple has an entirely different thing with their M1 and M2 chips. Earlier, Apple used to run on the Intel chips only, but right now they produce their own chips, which are the M1 and M2 chips. We are going to come to this section later because it doesn't require much of an explanation. The main thing we are going to talk about is the Intel and AMD Ryzen chips. So basically, what the nomenclature and generation means. Intel is one company and AMD Ryzen is another company. So Intel typically names its chips. Core is the most famous chip. So there are particular categories of chips as well in the Intel series, Core, Evo, but the most basic and the one you need to consider right now is the Core, Intel Core. So basically, Intel has chips in this nomenclature: i3, i5, i7, and i9. Similarly, Ryzen has R5, R7 and R9 as its popular chips. Now, what I mean by i3, i5, and i7 and i9 is that these are the different levels of processors which exist. i3 is the least powerful out of them, and i5 sorry, i3 gives the least performance and i9 gives the maximum performance. This is usually reserved for the gaming laptops. So as a beginner, I really don't think you need to consider buying a i9. The i3 basically gives good performance when you need just basic commercial tasks, for example, writing emails or working on working on Excel, Word maybe. Then i3 is the way to go. One more thing, the price increases as you go from i3 to i9. Now, there are generations. What I mean by generation is that each year Intel comes up with a new sort of chips. Each year or a year after a year or two, Intel comes up with a new architecture, which increases the performance of your laptop. For example, till 11th generation, they had a different architecture, and the 12th and 13th generation have a similar architecture. Similarly, Ryzen comes up with its generations too. Now, how a Intel chip is named typically is i7 12 700H, for example. Now, if you look closely, i7 is the level of the chip. Basically, the more the level of the chip, more cores and more threads it has, and the better performance it gives you. It also helps in multitasking and performing various heavy tasks together. I'm going to talk about cores and everything after this. But right now, what we need to focus on is how you can understand the name of a chip. What 12 means in the Intel nomenclature is that it's 12th generation, and one H means is that it's a heavy processor. I'm going to cover the types of processors as well based on their power wattages. And higher this number means better the processor. For example, 650 won't be as good as a 700. They have differences in their turbo frequency, which is measured in gigahertz. The frequency tells you how good a laptop would perform. Similarly, a Ryzen would be named something. I don't have much information on Ryzen, but a Ryzen is named like 5560, for example. Here, it demarcates that it's the fifth generation Ryzen. Sorry, R5 5560, for example, fifth generation, and again the same thing as Intel. Higher this number, the better the processor, and then again the classical H or H. Now, what exactly is H, which I'm mentioning time and again? So basically, they're based on the power a processor consumes, power consumption. There are three types of processors in both Intel and Ryzen. They are the U, P, and H. Now, on your all your ultrabooks, majority of the ultrabooks utilize a U type of processor. Now it has a power rating, minimum power rating of around 15 watt. What this means is that it draws around 15 wattages of power from your battery or your power supply when an adapter is connected. And basically, if it consumes less power, it gives you less performance since it has less threads, less cores, etc. Now, an H processor is usually what you see in gaming laptops. HX is or HS are the special editions which these companies use, and these are usually better than the H processor. H processor usually has a minimum frequency of 45 watt, minimum power rating of 45 watt, and it goes up to 115 watt. This would go around up to 45 watt, I guess, if I'm correct. So basically, what happens is that the H processors consume the maximum power, and if they're consuming the maximum power, they give you the maximum performance. They're not taking the power for nothing, right? They take the power for running the performance which they will be giving you. Now, between the U and H, there's a P processor. This is usually a middle range between the H and U. It is more powerful than the U processor, but not as powerful as an H processor. HX processors usually go from 55 watt at minimum frequency to, let's say, anything around 155 watts. These are the most powerful processors that exist in the market. Now, what's the difference between a i5 HX and a i7 HX? Basically, an i7 would have better performance and it would have more cores if you're talking about the layman terms. Now, what are the cores? Basically, you would, in the specifications of any laptop, you would read something as cores. Total cores as 10, for example. 4 would be the performance cores and 6 would be the efficiency cores, for example. Now, higher the number of cores means the more performance you get as the efficiency cores increase and the more multitasking you're able to perform. More the number of threads means the more number of applications you can run together. Uh, when I was a child, I used to make that analogy. If you have 16 threads, you have 16 hands working together. It doesn't necessarily mean that you can run 16 applications together, because some threads necessarily are managing the backend software as well. So coming back to the point of what a generation means. So with each generation, the architecture of a chip increases. It is made to be more efficient. The number of cores increases. For example, a Dell G15, the one I own, the Dell G15 has, it's a gaming laptop. It has an 12700H processor, and it has 10 cores in total. My laptop has 10 cores in total. It has 10 performance and 6 or 8 efficiency cores. Usually, a performance core is twice as powerful as an efficiency core, but that's a rough estimate. But a 13th generation of same i7 build, an i7 13th H processor with same power, 700 power as mine, has around 14 cores. So definitely, if the cores increase, the threads usually increase as well. So you get the point that with generation, the architecture improves and the performance increases as well. But 12th and 13th generation don't have a lot of difference. And for the beginners level, I don't recommend going to the 13th generation, since the 12th generation would do as competently well as the 13th generation laptop in i7 or any other chip. Now, you can go for the i3 processor if you are looking to do some simple tasks. i5 works for basic programming and any level of third year engineering courses you are going to take in college. But if you get into the heavy software like running machine learning models and everything, first of all, you're going to require a gaming laptop for that, because you would require dedicated GPU for heavy AI usage. And i5 works well for the CAD software as well, to be honest. But i7 is usually preferred if you want to work on a lot of CAD and heavy stuff. See, I'm no expert, but I'm just giving you a basic overview of this. Now we're going to. I'm sorry, I missed out on the Apple. So Apple uses the M1 and M2 chips. M2 is the newer version of them. M2 has its own types as well. M2 Pro, for example. Now, as you keep going to the better chip, the performance increases, the price also increases naturally. But yeah, Apple doesn't usually see. Yeah, one more thing I forgot to explain is that since H has such a high power rating, it consumes a lot of power from your battery pretty quickly. The GPU runs simultaneously as well in gaming laptops, so your battery life is typically cut short to 3 or 4 hours. In reality, the company claims that it is around 7 or 8 hours, but that's the testing of the battery life is just done that you leave a laptop open, and the time is noted till the time of its natural shutdown. So that's not really a reliable statistic. Uh, Windows gaming laptops, of course, only in Windows. If you need to do gaming, never go for an Apple one. This is just a pro tip here. So for a Windows laptop, the safe range for a gaming laptop of a battery life would be anywhere between 4 to 5 hours if it's a very good laptop, and if it has a 90 watt hour battery. But if you're gaming, you anyway need to plug in your charger and then play. For normal usage, a gaming laptop has a battery life of 3 to 4 hours or 4 to 5 hours. That depends on the watt hour of battery. A 65 watt hour battery is really not recommended for a gaming laptop. At least go for an 81 watt hour one. And Ultrabook easily runs around 7 to 8 hours in its initial years, and then of course there are declines. Apple laptop is naturally better since it has its own architecture and its battery life is easily around 18 hours. Any Mac you pick up, 12 to 18 hours is guaranteed for a Mac. They have very good battery life, and battery life is one of the primary reasons people invest those heavy cash into Apple laptops. So yeah, coming to the significance of RAM and SSD. So as I already explained, RAM basically controls the flow of events on your screen. It helps speed up the process if you have a higher RAM. Basically, a 16 GB RAM on Windows and an 8 GB RAM on Mac usually suffices. Mac's RAM is typically really good, so 8 GB would suffice on a Mac too. But if you're planning for something ambitious in computer science, don't go for 4 GB or 8 GB on a Windows any day. Okay, so the most recommended form of RAM is the DDR. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to turn off the automatic recognition. Yeah, so the most famous form of RAM is DDR. The newer laptops with i7 13 generation usually have DDR5 or DDR4 equally works equally well. You don't really need to focus much on the megahertz of RAM. The gaming laptops usually have around 48,000 and the ultrabooks have around, let's say, 36,000 megahertz or 3600 megahertz of RAM. You just need to focus on the amount of RAM you would be getting, and preferably a DDR4 or a DDR5 RAM would work very well. Now, the storage in your laptop should be in the form of an SSD if you want to future-proof your laptop, for example. HDDs really are not compatible anymore, and no one really uses HDDs anymore. So if you want to give your hard drive to your friend, for example, an external hard drive, that too I would suggest buy an compatible one which can work with the SSDs only, since SSD is the way to go for the future. A storage of anywhere around 256 GB or 512 GB works very well on Windows, with 512 GB being preferable. And in Mac, a 256 GB would work equally well. The Mac has totally different applications and everything, so they consume a little less space and it's much more efficient. So you can go for a 256 GB and be confident with a Mac with 256 GB storage and an 8 GB RAM, but the preferable combination for a Windows laptop is around 16 GB RAM and 512 GB SSD. Sorry. Yeah. Now I'm going to be covering the major differentiating factor between gaming and ultrabooks, the processor and the use of dedicated graphics card. Now, when you buy an ultrabook, it has an integrated GPU in its processor. What I mean is that you would have heard about Intel Iris graphics card, right? So basically, you have a chip. This is your i7 or an R7, for example. I'm not covering Mac in this. This is only for Windows laptops, since in Mac you don't really have the preference for graphics card. Everything is integrated into the M1 or the M2 chip. The Pro is usually better for the graphics work, but it's definitely more expensive. And Air works perfectly fine for the beginner tasks in college. So, along with an Intel i7 or R7, you have an integrated GPU in an Ultrabook, which controls the tasks which require graphics, for example, running your videos, running basic games, not the heavy ones, of course, running basic models, etc. The processor type, as I already explained, and why it consumes less power. But when you come to a gaming laptop, it has the i7. Of course, the processor type is H or HX, and the integrated GPU, but you also get a dedicated graphics card in this, which is usually the NVIDIA RTX 3050, for example, 30 series or the 40 series. 3050 is a 4 GB one, 3060 or TIs are usually the 6 GB ones. So basically, when you get a dedicated graphics card, you get a dedicated GPU. In a dedicated GPU, you're able to perform the tasks which require a lot of graphics, for example. While it might not make sense to you why machine learning, like why for machine learning, heavy machine learning are good for a gaming laptop, because it requires GPUs. Okay, they run on the GPU bits. The processing of a ML model is done on a GPU bit. So you basically, I might not be very correct with the terminology, but I'm just trying to give you a basic hang of things here. So for that, gaming laptops are really good and they have a dedicated graphics card. So next I'm trying to look at what specs to look for in order to future-proof your laptop. So if you want to be sure that your laptop is going to run for the next 4 to 5 years, I would recommend, if you have the money, go for an Apple M2 or an M12. Anyone would work. Go for an M1 and M2 Air with 8 GB RAM and 256 GB SSD. Since Apple products usually don't decline in their performance and they run strong for at least 5 or 6 years. Plus, Apple usually doesn't upgrade their models pretty quickly, so you can be secure about future-proofing yourself with an Apple laptop. But I understand that many people want to go for Windows, which I'm going to talk about, why people, even with the cash, prefer Windows over an Apple sometimes. But some people have the restrictions of money. That's pretty understandable. We live in a middle class economy country, so yeah, uh, everyone, including me, needs to be careful about the prices. If we don't have a free flow of cash, so sorry for that comment. If you don't have a very large budget, that's the correct terminology. So you can definitely go for these specs in a window to be future proof. An i5 12th gen or i7 12th gen. If you have the extra cash to spend, you can go for the 13th gen as well. i5 or the i7 12th or 13th gen, 16 GB of RAM and a 512 SSD works really well. These are the basic specs you need to keep in mind if you're trying to future proof yourself. In gaming laptops, a 3060 graphic card, 6 GB, works really well to future proof you. Now I'm going to discuss about Windows and Mac, why people basically prefer Windows over Mac even if they have the cash. So basically, Mac is the easier and more user friendly, is the easier operating system, and it is more user friendly. If you are a content creator or you need to do some graphics related work, not to the level of gaming laptops, of course, you can go for an Apple, but beware that Apple laptops don't support gaming at all. You can do the basic level of gaming, but I don't think that anyone even thinks of doing gaming if they're buying a Mac. A Macs have really good battery lives, and their longevity is excellent. But why people prefer a Windows laptop over a Mac laptop? That's because Mac OS is a closed operating system. You have to pay for every external software which you buy here, and you cannot pirate any software. While pirating a software might not make a lot of sense now, but in the future, pirating some software has become necessary to perform some tasks while in your college, while you're pursuing engineering or a computer science degree. So Windows laptops give you the access to split your C drive and install the Linux OS as well. Linux is very important for the people pursuing cybersecurity or even game development in some cases, since Unity is a Linux engine. So basically in Mac you would get access to Unix. I don't know about the latest version, but Ubuntu Linux was or Unix was usually available to the previous few versions. But now everything including AI and all in Mac runs on cloud. And for Linux and other tasks which you might need, you need to use the virtual machine, which is usually not desirable since Mac restricts the amount of things you can explore. That's just my opinion. Some people might argue, and they might have valid arguments as well. But in Windows, you have no restrictions whatsoever. You can download open source, you can pirate software, you don't need to pay for everything. You can split your C drive and install Linux if you are trying to expose cybersecurity in the near future. In Mac, you can typically do that, but Macs offer better security on your password and everything since it's a closed operating system. So I'm going to be talking about the other specs now: display, refresh rate, backlit, screen size, ports, etc. So basically, there are different types of display. The most famous one being 45% NMTC display. So this is the most common and the budget range display you're going to see in most gaming laptops and the ultrabooks as well. Ultrabooks have some other screen types which are not really popular anymore. Then you get a famous screen type that's 100% sRGB. So basically, and then of course you have OLED and everything. So as you go down the order, your price increases, and of course the clarity, the vividness of the colors and everything, and the impact, the more the price and the quality, the lesser impact they have on your eyes as well, since they emit less rays and they have better clarity and everything. So this was about display, but a 45% NMTC is the most preferred one. My laptop has 45% NMTC too, and it works wonders, trust me. So refresh rate is something like it reflects how fast your screen updates or how fast it refreshes. Ultrabooks usually have a 120 hertz refresh rates, or it is a desirable thing to go for if you don't want to be frustrated with the laptop or anything. You can dip down to, I don't know if its specification still comes, but 90 hertz can still be helpful. 120 hertz would be my suggestion to go for if you have a appropriate budget for it. Gaming laptops, 145 hertz should be good enough since they require it. 165 hertz is honestly just extra cash you're spending. So just go for a 144 hertz refresh rate. Now, backlit keyboard is basically your keyboard has keys, and you're just going to see some lighting behind this. It was going to have some lighting. This can be helpful if you want to program in dark spaces or if you like the feel of it. Now, there's simple one color backlit is RGB backlit. Now, these are just specific gaming terms. If you want to buy a gaming laptop, I'm pretty sure you already know about it. Now, talking about the screen size, either buy a 13-inch one or a 15.61 6-inch one. Equivalent in Mac is a 15-inch one, is the most desirable sizes. Since a 14-inch one just would be a middle size, 13-inch one offers you portability and less price. A 15-inch one offers you a bigger screen size and a more pleasurable experience. But 14-inch or anything in between these two doesn't really make sense to me. So, talking about the ports, now, another big disadvantage of Mac laptops and why people prefer Windows over Mac is that due to perfecting the sleek design, the Mac took out all the ports except two Type-C ports. So the Apple users now need to use connectors for everything. What connector is basically uh, something like this. This is a connector which has a Type C on its one end, and for example, a USB, a Type C, and an HDMI port on the other end, so that you can use these ports on a Mac. Mac has only two Type C ports, the newer versions. They removed the USB port since they wanted to make the design more sleek. But on a Windows, you definitely need to keep some important ports in mind. Do get a USB 3.2 port, a USB Type C, and a LAN or Ethernet port and an HDMI port with an option for SSD reader would be really desirable. Now, why an HDMI port is important is that, for example, you're giving some presentation in your college and you need to connect your laptop to a projector, for example. You can just plug in the HDMI cable and your laptop directly connects to the projector. The LAN or the Ethernet port would be really great if you have wired network that is better than the wireless network at some places. And a USB port, everyone knows, is a necessity of the day. For example, if you want to use a graphic tablet like I am using right now, one by Wacom, you would need a USB port in your laptop to insert your graphic card cable. Sorry, not graphic card, graphic tablet cable. But in Apple, be sure to buy the either the Apple or any other company buy the connectors. Many people call them adapters as well, but these are called connectors. Now I'm going to be summarizing everything slowly, bit by bit. Now, as I already explained, the weight of the laptop, a weight of a gaming laptop increases since you need to include the cooling system. So cooling system should be good enough for your gaming laptops. Otherwise, the graphic card and the CPU would or the chip would, since it's a heavy processor consuming a lot of power, it would just heat up and it won't be good for your laptop or the CPU or GPU either. One thing to keep in mind is that if you're going for a 45 watt to 115 watt edge processor, make sure there are at least two cooling fans, which can be activated by pressing some button on your gaming laptop when you need to go to high performance softwares, when you need high performance basically. And your ultrabook with 15-watt processor should have at least one fan cooling. This is a preferable thing. Now, the balance between battery life and performance. This is where I was talking about the specific user cases of a Mac and and battery life basically. So, for battery life, I would suggest you to go for Ultrabooks. Dell Inspiron, HP Pavilion are really good options. You can, of course, go for MSI or the newer brands as well. For performance, higher performance, I suggest you should go for, and only if you have specific user needs like high level programming, video editing, and all. For video editing, definitely you can go for a Mac, but for other things like high level AI, which you don't want to run on cloud, high level gaming and everything, a gaming laptop is a way to go. Here you would be sacrificing on your battery life. But I have a special thing for this too. If you are an AI developer, for example, and you need specific things, you can't compromise on your battery life as well. You need a dedicated graphics card. You can go for anything like a creator series of an Asus. They have an ultrabook finish. They have a dedicated graphics card. They have somewhat powerful processor. They have like somewhere around maximum power of 95 or 110 watts, and you get a decent 6 to 7 hour battery life as well. So this is the Asus Creator Series. They're called VivoBooks, if I remember correctly. So this is Asus Creator Series. I'm not a Asus user personally, so I won't comment on how good they are. I'm personally using a Dell G15 since I plan to pursue cybersecurity and AI in the near future. So yeah, I would be using that. But if you want to have specific user cases, you can go for the Asus Creator Series. You can visit a showroom and typically inquire about what a Creator Series is for. So next we are going to be talking about the final things. International warranty. Make sure that your laptop is covered by at least 3 years of international warranty. If you don't get it, if you don't get it automatically with your laptop, just purchase it. Now, trust me, shelling out 10 or 14K is going to sound like a lot if you're going to take an advance uh, warranty for a laptop. But for example, you break your screen once in a year, you get free replacement. A screen otherwise would cost anywhere around 8 or 9K. So why not pay 10K for 3 years? I mean, even if you spill water or coffee over your keyboard, you're going to get replaced free of cost. So yeah, definitely go for an international warranty. You might not know where you end up the other day. You might go abroad for your studies, for example. So buying international warranty is always recommended. Now, one good offer which is going on right now is the Uni Days on Apple, where you are getting free AirPods Pro, the small ones, the AirPods Pro, not the headsets. You are going to be getting them for free with your laptop. Plus, you're going to be getting 10K off on laptops that are Air. And on Pros, you're going to be getting free AirPods, and you're going to getting free AirPods with Air too. Free AirPods plus around 20K recession on this. So that was it for this video. I tried to cover everything in detail. Sorry for the long length of this video, but I really hope you enjoyed it. Do tell me in the comments if you would like to know anything more. I'm more than happy to reply. I'm not expecting a lot of likes or subscribe or anything. I just want to put this video out because I did months of research and I wanted to help people out with tapering it down to maybe an half an hour on an hour or something. So yeah, thank you very much. Have a great day.